Yes, is the BBC's reputation about to be blown away by the Jimmy Savile debacle?
Is the BBC's reputation about to be blown away by the Jimmy Savile debacle? Grant Shapps.
Well, I think this has been very, very concerning the last week or two as this has come out. What's incredible is this is something which appears to have taken place not just over the last few years, but over 4 decades, which means that a lot of people must have been aware, and now it turns out, I think there are around 30 cases the police have said have come forward, and it day by day seems unimaginable that people within the BBC didn't know. Indeed, there was that Newsnight report that was put together but not aired, apparently because there was about to be a programme with 3 separate airings of a programme paying tribute to Jimmy Savile's life. So I think there are questions to be answered. I think the BBC knows there are questions to be answered, and that's why the chairman, Chris Patton, came out yesterday, and I thought he was fairly firm in saying that somebody independent should be appointed to look into this. And I absolutely agree. What happened now appears to have been absolutely outrageous and have gone on for the longest time.
What are the issues for the BBC's reputation? Is it the broadcast of the celebratory programmes about Savile when they knew that Newsnight had been interviewing people who alleged that they'd been abused, or is it nobody within the BBC over 40 years ever saying, I think something's going wrong?
Well, look, I think it's disturbing now when you hear the number of people who've come forward from within and outside the BBC and said, actually, I did know something, or I suspected something, or I was one of the victims in this. I think it's particularly disturbing, though, as you suggest, that a programme paying tribute, a 3-parter, went out when there were obviously...
Well, 3 different programmes.
3 different programmes. But just last Christmas, wasn't it? After it was already known, certainly at senior levels within the BBC, that something was wrong, enough to have had a serious Newsnight programme made about it, and enough to have raised serious concerns. So I think we do need to now know who knew what and when, and yes, I do think there are definitely questions that need answering.
Christina O'Doney.
Well, I think that one of the biggest shocks is that it happened at the heart of the liberal establishment, in the hallowed halls of the BBC, which is cherished and trusted and respected, and we're so comfortable and cozy with the BBC that we call her auntie. And I think that there were 2 levels of trust that were betrayed. One was by Jimmy Savile and his victims, young underage girls and I think 1 boy, but also us, the license fee payers, and we feel that we've been taken for a ride. And I think that one of the interesting things is that BBC programme makers were very vicious and thorough in their condemnation of the Catholic Church when they had their own gross child abuse scandals. And I think, in fact, what we could do is for the BBC to learn from the way that the Catholic Church mishandled its dealings of the child abuse cover-up. And we should have a very prompt and very independent investigation. We should have a very public apology, not only by Chris Patton, but by the Director General of the BBC, and we should have compensation for the victims and a thorough clean-up of what looks like very filthy practices.
And do you think that's happening, or do you think the BBC is dragging its feet?
I think it dragged its feet. I mean, I think already we can say that we should have already had a thorough clean-up of what's happened.
Man up there.
The question that I've got is, it's all well and good the BBC with Jimmy Savile. What is the reputation of the various charities that Mr Savile was associated with? Surely they're going to be tarnished as well with the same brush. Will there be something done by where the charities association can be moved away? Because otherwise they may well lose donations because of the association with Mr Savile.
Do you think it was as much a surprise to the hospital, Stoke Mandeville, Leeds, those places where he worked?
I think so, yes. Yeah, without a doubt.
And the person up there in the very back row.
Shouldn't Jimmy Savile immediately lose his title?
Should he lose his title?
Sir Jimmy Savile. He shouldn't be a sir anymore.
Benjamin Zephaniah.
I think they are considering taking the title away from him, but I don't know. I must say that when I when this story first broke, this is a little bit of a confession. I jumped off the settee and I said, I knew it. Seriously, I knew it. I saw a documentary about him where somebody asked him about his feelings, and he had no feelings for anybody. They asked him if he could love anybody. He said, what is love? He had no emotional intelligence at all. He didn't seem to care about anybody. And I remember thinking, that's a very dangerous person. But, you know, it was a private thought, and I could never have said that in public because I had no evidence.
He was giving he was raising millions for charities. I mean, you know, I remember first going into the Catholic Herald and being told there is this saint called Jimmy, and they were all bowled over by how brilliant he was, how he was tireless in his devotion to charities, especially charities dealing with young children.
I have to say that I went to a children's home, and I knew kids who were abused in children's homes. I never was. But I had to, at night, sometimes try and stop children from getting out of the bed in the middle of the night and going to meet members of staff. So, and I remember a kid crying in front of me, begging me to let him go to be abused because he was so scared. And this addresses the point that you just raised. When we put people on a pedestal...
You're right, you're right.
And we bigged them up so much, and Jimmy Saville was basically a BBC man through and through, then they just become untouchable. And they can do good things in the community. A lot of people who abuse children do good things in the community. They do football, and they do church, and they do all those things to have access to these young people. And so we put them up on a pedestal, and they become untouchable. My mother last night said, I don't believe anything of this like Jimmy Saville. I think he's a good man.
What
look of all the good things he's done.
What about the BBC's reputation, which is what Des's question was?
I remember in the 80s going into an office in the BBC. If I could remember the person, I'd say, but this person was waiting to get a secretary, and I said, what's she like? And he said, I don't care as long as she's got big breasts. That was somebody in an office in the BBC. There was a culture at the time that allowed that kind of thing, and they just got away with it.
Okay. Person up there in the second row from the back. Yes.
I think there's something of a nasty taste to be left by the fact that if this investigation is to be pursued, based that we live in a society where everybody remains innocent until proven guilty and has the right to be tried in a court of law, that if the BBC is going to be seen to be supporting this, that it's going to set a precedent to bring posthumous convictions and allegations against other people that have passed away now, and the trauma that will cause to their families.
Caroline Flint, do you want to answer that point?
Well, I mean, it's not like he is going to be tried in a court of law because he's dead. I think the problem is what we've got now is every single day more people coming forward with things that they witnessed or happened to them, and I don't think we can avoid that and ignore that. And as far as the BBC's reputation, I think there's two aspects to this. One is, I think, still to get to the bottom of why the Newsnight report was squashed and the reasons for that. But the second part of it is about looking at the BBC as an institution and reflecting on whether there's more they should have done during that period. And I'm not just talking about Jimmy Saville. Liz Kershaw, the radio DJ, recounted that when she was broadcasting, male colleagues would literally come to her and put their hands on her breasts while she was broadcasting when she couldn't do anything about it. And when she raised it, she was said, that's just part of what it's like here. That's just what you have to put up with. So I think there is an issue about addressing that. But I think wider than the BBC, it's recognising, I think, what Benjamin said about when we put people on a pedestal, but also within institutions, whether it's a church institution, a school, a children's home, politics, the media, hospitals or wherever, how do we protect the most vulnerable within those institutions? And we don't allow the powerful to basically, take complete liberties with the power they've got. And I think that's important. And just to bring it up to date, let's not believe that this is something in the past. We have seen those young girls who were groomed and into prostitution, and they raised their voice and the police didn't listen to them, people didn't listen to them in community, and every single day there are women and men facing sexual harassment at work in different situations, and often they're fearful of saying anything because they think they'll be ridiculed and told that they're too politically correct. It's here today, maybe not in the same way as the 70s and 80s, but it's still here about people feeling powerless where they're in a position where those who are more powerful over them keep them from raising their voice.
Yes.
I think we also have to question why so few people came forward until now. What does it say about our society that they stayed silent for so long? And also, if they did come forward, why weren't they listened to?
Simon Hughes.
I want to pick up where the last gentleman made his contribution. The extraordinary thing is that apparently nobody went to the police over 40 years. I found that almost unbelievable. If somebody ever did go to the police and that comes out, then that raises another set of really serious issues. Of course there's a BBC issue, because a public broadcaster has an obligation to all the people who come and work for it and come as visitors to make sure they are respected and not abused, and there is a serious issue. It's not going to be hampered, in this case, by criminal prosecution because the man in question is dead, so they don't have to wait for the police and the CPS and all these people to... So the BBC can get on with things now. But I have one equally big concern. Jimmy Savile appeared to go into hospitals on a regular basis and other public sector institutions where there were vulnerable people, and that for me is as worrying that he apparently went about his illegal and disgraceful business there, and there weren't complaints made or pursued or followed up or anything to the police. And the one place where everybody in this room would want people to be secure are the sort of children's homes where Benjamin was talking about, and the hospitals of our country run by the state. We absolutely have to make sure schools and hospitals are safeguarded institutions, and if they have failed, there's a really serious issue about Leeds hospitals and Stoke Mandeville and all those other places.
Somebody raised the point about the knighthood, and in fact knighthoods expire when someone dies, but of course people still think that the Sir is still there. I'd be in favour, I think, of the Forfeiture Committee taking a close look at this, because it can't be right that somebody apparently keeps the Sir in front of their name when this is the reality of their lives.
And what he was given it for in the first place.
I'll take a couple more brief points from our members' audience. Somebody's gone. The woman there in...
I tend to like solutions rather than problems. So how do we move on for this and make sure it doesn't happen again? I think Saville's celebrity status is a problem. He's managed to get into these places and been able to do this under that umbrella. I think the public sector needs support in ensuring that no matter what status a person has, whether they're a manager of somewhere, a celebrity, a footballer, that they have the support to be able to whistle blow and talk, and people will believe them.
Okay. And I'll take one more point from you, sir, in the white shirt there.
Watching something on the BBC this morning, actually, an interview with a lady that was saying, making an allegation against him, said that she told her parents and they shrugged it off as something, oh, no, he wouldn't do that. I think there's serious issues there with parents saying to their child that wouldn't happen if something needs to be done at home.
Okay. Let's go on. Just before we go on to another question, just so you can join in this debate at home, as you probably know, you can put